Okay, so we're up to DEVLOG 12. We've had some fun along the way, we've learned a little bit, maybe even a little bit of personal growth, but it's time to get down to real business. It's time to start asking the hard-hitting questions. Enough joking around. And today, we ask the question, can Redeemart be played on a Logitech F710 wireless controller? Let's find out! So for a few weeks there, it seemed like the only story anybody could talk about was the missing Titanic sub, and I was no different. However, the thing that I found particularly interesting was the old Logitech controller that was being used to control the sub. And while, unfortunately, the story has had quite a sad, tragic ending, and the world has moved on, it left me wondering, could you play my game on this old controller? So I figured let's test it out. After a quick 2-day shipping, it arrived at my door. Of course, right away, I was eager to get into this and see if it would work. So eager I managed to knock over my camera trying to open up the packaging. Once it was open, I was greeted to a fairly stiff and uncomfortable controller. It has a nice coating on it, and it came with batteries in it, which was nice. But it definitely wasn't very comfortable to hold for long periods of time. I wondered if I would be able to connect with the Bluetooth adapter I already had, but it looks like it has its own specific wireless adapter. And with that, it was time for the moment of truth. I plugged the dongle in, and was happy to discover my computer picked up the controller right away. Once Windows recognized it, I opened up my project and hit play. You'll notice my handy monitor cam, so you can tell that this is real, professional level gameplay, no cheating going on. Oh baby. Even before I started using the sticks, when the game started up and I could see the Xbox 360 icons, I knew that it was working, which was really exciting. I wondered if it was gonna or not. So of course I fired up the last level in the game, the most challenging one, and tried it out on these new sticks. I don't think I really have much to say about how it played. It was definitely not the best controller I've ever used to play Redeemart, but it was also fine. So after messing around for a little bit, I wanted to try out one of the controller's advertised features. Although this is like a 13-year-old controller, there's a toggle at the top you wouldn't expect, which lets you switch from X input to direct input, and I wondered if my game would be able to pick it up. It seems to get it with X input, but direct input it seems to not be able to recognize it. This is interesting but not hugely surprising. 13 years ago, it was kind of the Wild West for controllers like this. It was actually really hard to know if your controller would be recognized by games. Now things are a lot more standardized. So going into all this, I was pretty certain my game was going to be able to work with the controller. And the reason why I was pretty confident in that was I'm using SDL to detect controllers. And it has pretty robust handling of all different controllers. So you can see in my code here, I have a line where I check the name of the controller, and then SDL has this function which will give you the controller type. And I use that to determine what kind of icons to show. So SDL recognizes this controller as an Xbox 360 controller. And to give you a comparison point, I plugged in my Xbox One controller and hit this line. Different name for the controller, and the type here, the Xbox One. aside from SDL being pretty robust in its handling of all this, the big reason why I was so confident that this would work is at the beginning I load a file that's a database of different game controllers. And I hadn't looked through it to see if it was in there. I wanted a big moment of surprise, but I knew it was a big file that had a lot of random controllers in it, and I thought there was a pretty good chance. And sure enough, after trying it out, I opened up this file and searched through, and if you can believe it, I found the controller. This file is actually really neat. It has handling for all of these different controllers, and it also remaps buttons and handles joystick axes. So maybe one joystick is inverted on a controller, or maybe you have like a Nintendo Switch controller where the buttons are different letters on them. I actually went through and I made this change to using SDL controller input just before releasing on Steam because I really wanted to make sure that I covered all the potential inputs users could have. Okay, so with our fun sub-content done, let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. So I had some bugs around screen fades I wanted to fix. I noticed a couple issues with the card UI, and I thought there was an opportunity to improve performance on skeletons in the game. Beginning with the fades, there was two spots in the game where I do a screen fade where I noticed a bug. The first one was when the intro is just finishing, which I'll show you right now. Leaving the fade from the bricks and entering back to the store appears dark for some reason. Then during the brick section, there's a moment where you become friends with one of the characters and the screen is supposed to fade. And as you can see, there's something going on. It's a little awkward with this fade. The way I'm achieving this fade is I have the image that would normally be rendered on screen on the back buffer. It's showing on the screen. And then on top of that, I draw a solid color and I blend the two together. So just like here in Photoshop, I draw this red square, and by adjusting the opacity of the red square, I can blend it with the image behind, which is the same functionality I'm achieving in my code. Now, looking at this bug, I had a sneaking suspicion one of two things was happening. I have some bad logic about when the fades are triggered, so I wondered if that was part of the issue. And then I also was a little skeptical about my blending in itself, and I wondered if that shader was causing the problem. So this is the shader. All it's doing is taking in this fade color and using this norm value to set the alpha, and it'll blend it with what's already on the screen. And then my C++ code here, I just set the blend function to be a normal blend. So as I began working on this bug, the first thing I did was I tried to work on my logic around initiating the fade. Like I said, I knew that there were some problems there. It is a little bit awkward. There's just a bool that says there's a fade happening, and then I fade up, I hold the color, then I fade back down, and I knew it could be better. So I went through and I rewrote this in hopes that that would solve the issue. Although I cleaned up the code significantly, I still wasn't seeing the issue resolved. And so I wondered what was happening with the blend. That darkness in the store view was really peculiar to me. So I wondered if I just set a solid value, in this case 5%, so that we should have 5% of the color red and 95% of the background image, if I would get that. And you can see with that darkness that clearly something is still going wrong. At this point, I really wondered if my blending was the issue. You can specify specific blend functions in OpenGL, and I had messed around with this before, and I wondered if this was the culprit. But after trying some different combinations and not making any progress, I figured that wasn't what was the issue. So what I ultimately tried was I disabled doing any drawing during the fade, because I just wanted to see, is using this shader causing the issue? So I tried running it without actually doing any fading, and as you can see, there was still a problem on screen. So this told me that something in this function is affecting the rendering pipeline and is causing an issue with what we see. So I went through and I added in enabling the blend and disabling depth testing before we do the draw, and then after we do the draw, I enable and disable toggle them back to the way they were before. And that ended up resolving the issue. I think that whenever I was calling this, it was changing the state of these options, and then moving forward in the render was causing issues. And running it with that change in place, you can see things are working well. Also, those bricks are no longer oddly transparent like they were before, and we get a clean fade. And our other fade here is also improved. And once again, we get rid of some weird transparency issues I was having. With the fades improved, we move that item from the working on to the coming up in the next build. So now we start working on the bugs in the card UI. I had noticed some weird UI elements while I was testing the game, and so I wanted to get back and make sure that I resolved any issues that were there. The first issue was pretty straightforward. You can just see here the set complete little stamp I have there is overlapping with the button prompts. So I just wanted to move that so it doesn't overwrite like it is right now. The other bugs I had noticed around the card UI was around getting cards and completing sets. There's a progress bar in the UI that fills up every time you get a new card, and there's that set complete that'll appear when the set is done. So in my testing, I had noticed some times where the progress bar was a little funky or it would go beyond 100%. So I tried to set up a test case here of making sure that it's hard-coded which cards you get, so I could know I'm going to get a full set and see if I have any issues. The only bug I really noticed was if you get 2 cards to complete a set, so 2 of the 3 cards, you can see here the text turns white on the first card, because the game knows that set is now complete, even though you haven't gotten the next card to complete the set. So I wanted to make sure I fixed that, but I wasn't seeing any of the issues around the progress bar going too far or being strange. And I think that the reason why that was happening was when I was doing my testing of the game, just testing random levels, I have some set save files, and I think that maybe I was getting weird data from my save files or odd situations that you wouldn't encounter naturally in the game. It's always hard with these things because I don't want to ignore any issues I've noticed, but also I wasn't able to replicate this. So I've fixed this so that that white text only appears once the set is actually complete to the user, and I'm going to keep an eye on this moving forward. So with the card UI bugs handled and I'm keeping an eye on it, I'm going to move those into coming in the next build. And that was most of what I've been up to this week. I have this optimized skeleton instancing as well. I did some investigating on this, but I haven't quite decided how I'm going to handle this. This actually overlaps a lot with the video I did last week about instancing and sending lots of data to a shader at one time. Without getting too far into the weeds, this array bones is bones that are sent for skeletal animations. Right now it's set to 100. The larger this array is, the more demons I can render with one draw call. But because different graphics cards support different sizes, I don't want to go too far and cause issues. So I wanted to see if there was a way that I could maximize that number based off the card, but I didn't really find any clean, easy solutions. And that's going to be what we cover for this devlog, but I wanted to clean up the last couple issues with that initial release before I can start covering new exciting topics and features. Alrighty, so I thought we'd have a little bit of fun this week, do something a little bit out of the norm as well as covering what I've been working on with the game. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to check out the channel and stay tuned. We got some more fun stuff coming up. I'm going to be doing my first game jam ever soon. I'm going to be messing around with Unreal Engine, and I'm going to do another coding example like the last video. So be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, follow along, and have a great day, everybody.